We are all able to hear
Yeah,
you.
okay. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Hello? Yeah. Is everything all right at your end, Dr. Geethanjali?
Yes, sir. I will present through phone.
Okay, just a minute, just hold on, please. Let us be on YouTube live first. Just give us some 1 minute. We are just trying to put the
Yes.
YouTube on. Right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue 3D, and we have soft tissue tumors. And the topic for the day is pediatric soft tissue tumors, an approach to small round blue cell tumors. And we have Dr. Geethanjali there. And before we start, let me request everybody to mute your mic, your camera, and please do not share your screen. So Dr. Geethanjali, please take over. Thank you so much. And sorry for the confusion. Please share your screen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Hello. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yeah, perfectly visible. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Please start.
So today we are going to discuss about the soft tissue tumors, which are in the just
Yeah, that's fine.
yes, sir, the pediatric soft tissue tumors. So the neoplasms of soft tissue are more common in children and adolescents when compared to adults. And in children, we have more of the benign entities and also the malformations like the vascular malformations, hematomas, overgrowth or reactive processes are more common than malignancies in pediatric patients. And the sarcomas, which are malignant tumors, account for approximately 7% of malignancies in young patients. So in pediatric soft tissue tumors, it is very important to give a proper definitive diagnosis because the treatment regimen is very specific for some set of tumors like rhabdomyosarcoma, which is the most common sarcoma in the first 5 years of child age group. It is extremely chemosensitive. Even the Ewing sarcoma, which is common later in the childhood, these two tumors are extremely chemosensitive. And so in the pediatric soft tissue tumors, if we go by age-based approach to the soft tissue tumor, in infancy we have some category of tumors which are very common in infantile age group. These include the fibrous hematoma of infancy, inclusion body fibromatosis, juvenile fibromatosis, infantile fibrosarcomas, lipoblastomas, and infantile myofibroma or myofibromatosis, which are the benign category. And the lipofibromatosis is also common in infancy and in children below the age group of 3 years. And the most common malignant tumor in infantile group is the infantile fibrosarcoma. And in children and adolescents, we also have multiple hemangiomas, calcifying aponeurotic fibromas, the Dabska tumors, Kaposiform hemangioendothelioma, and giant cell fibroblastoma, which are of intermediate category, locally aggressive tumors, and the malignant tumors, which are common in the infant, child, and adolescent, are embryonal rhabdomyosarcomas, extrarenal rhabdoid tumors. And in adolescent tumors, we again have myositis ossificans, nodular fasciitis, and ossifying fibromyxoid tumor, angiomatoid fibrous histiocytoma, plexiform fibrohistiocytic tumor. And there are a set of malignant tumors common in childhood, which I'll be discussing now. So starting with the first entity, which is a fibrous hematoma of infancy. It occurs in infants and young children who are less than 2 years. And the most common sites include the axilla, trunk, upper extremities, and genital regions. As the name suggests, previously it was thought to be a hematoma. Hematoma is like presence of normal tissue abnormally. So, but recently it is identified there is a recurrent EGFR exon 20 insertions and duplications, making it a neoplasm and not a hematoma. So morphologically, we have this lesion present in the subcutaneous, as we can see in this picture, above we have epidermis, dermis, and the subcutaneous tissue. So fibrous hematoma of infancy is a lesion which is centered in the subcutaneous tissue. And to make a diagnosis of fibrous hematoma, we need three organoid features, which are three specific features. We should see presence of adipose tissue, which are formed of mature lipocytes or mature adipocytes, and fascicles of proliferating spindle cells, and then myxoid or immature mesenchyme. So before making diagnosis of fibrous hematoma, we should see presence of this myxoid or immature mesenchyme. That is important to differentiate it from other entity, which is called as lipofibromatosis. It is important to differentiate because fibrous hematoma of infancy, it doesn't recur when it is locally excised. The recurrence rate is very low, which is approximately 10 to 15%, whereas lipofibromatosis has a high recurrence rate of more than 70%. So lipofibromatosis is an entity which is common in the distal extremities, and similar to fibrous hematoma of infancy, we see this lesion in the subcutaneous plane. We have this proliferation of intersecting fascicles of the spindle cells, which are fibroblastic proliferations, admixed with adipocytes. And sometimes we see, since it is an infantile age group, we can also see presence of adipocytes at the different age of maturation. Here, what is missing is the myxoid matrix. So if we don't see myxoid matrix in an otherwise looking fibrous hematoma of infancy, we should make a diagnosis of lipofibromatosis since the recurrence rate is very high. So this is a recent entity, which is an emerging entity present in the WHO 2020, which is the NTRK rearranged spindle cell neoplasm. So this entity was previously identified as a lipofibromatosis-like neural tumor. As the name suggests, the morphology is just like lipofibromatosis, but like neural tumor, we have expression of S100 by this spindle cell proliferation. So this is a spindle cell proliferation you can see present in between the adipose tissue. And in addition to this, they have identified that in lipofibromatosis like neural tumor, we have this ropey collagen, which similar to that of spindle cell neoplasm, and even perivascular hyalinization or collagenization is present. And this entity is common in first 2 decades. It's a fibromatous lesion expressing CD34 and also neural tumor expressing S100. And if we do the tyrosine kinase receptor pan-TRK immunohistochemistry, these cells come positive for NTRK, and in genetically it shows NTRK1 rearrangement, and it shows a more local recurrence just like fibromatosis. And there are some tumors in this some category of tumors which show high-grade morphology with lot of nuclear atypia and mitosis, and these high-grade lesions tend to metastasize. The differential diagnosis for this entity is fibrous hematoma of infancy. We can differentiate by lack of the myxoid immature mesenchyme. And in comparison to lipofibromatosis, these lesions are more cellular and these express S100, which is not seen in lipofibromatosis. Spindle cell lipoma also come into differential diagnosis because of presence of spindle cells, adipocytes. We can see adipocytes of different sizes, and the ropey collagen seen in spindle cell lipoma is almost similar, but we don't see S100 expression in spindle cell lipoma. Other differential diagnosis is dermatofibrosarcoma. Again, S100 immunostaining is helpful. And in high-grade lesions, infantile fibrosarcoma comes in differential diagnosis, but it has some other morphological clues to differentiate infantile fibrosarcoma, which I'll discuss later. So the next entity I'm going to describe is the plexiform fibrohistiocytic tumor. So I have included this. It is a fibrohistiocytic tumor of intermediate malignancy. I have included that tumor here because in low power here we can see that there are some interlacing plexiform-like lesions which are present in the dermis and subcutaneous plane. So in low power it may look similar to the fibrous hematoma of infancy, but these are composed of cells which are of histiocytoid to fibroblastic cells, and we can also see presence of many osteoclast-like giant cells within these nodules. And background also shows presence of inflammatory cells. These plexiform fibrohistiocytic tumors are more common in upper rather than lower limb, and it occurs predominantly in the children and young adult age group. So next entity is lipoblastoma. We should not confuse lipofibromatosis from lipoblastoma. So lipoblastoma is a tumor which is seen in very young children of less than 3 years. And in low power, we can see that there is a kind of extreme lobulated pattern which is appreciated in the low power. And the background has a abundant myxoid stroma. In addition to the lobulated tumor, in the background, we can also see presence of many small capillary-like vascular channels. And this lipofibromatosis is characterized by presence of variable sized adipocytes and also spindled immature mesenchyme like looking cells which are present to the periphery. So it comes for differential diagnosis of myxoid liposarcoma, which is a malignant adipocytic tumor seen in children, but we should keep age in consideration. Myxoid liposarcoma occurs in little older children in late childhood, and the background is myxoid in both lipoblastoma as well as myxoid liposarcoma. But lipoblastoma has a more prominent lobulated architecture, whereas liposarcoma doesn't have that lobulated architecture. And the myxoid liposarcoma has more cellularity in the periphery of the lesion, which is not seen in lipoblastoma. In case of doubt, and if we want to prove it, we can see for DDIT3 fusion in case of myxoid liposarcoma, whereas lipoblastoma shows 8q aberrations with PLAG1 gene rearrangement. So next entity I'm going to describe, which is common in children and young adults, is the calcifying aponeurotic fibroma. This calcifying aponeurotic fibroma is common in the trunk and also distal extremities. It is common in hands and palm, and it presents as a circumscribed to infiltrating lesion, and it is characterized by presence of this granular calcification like material, and this is surrounded by these cells which are seen to be emerging from this granular calcified material, and the cells around the calcification seem to be oval or epithelioid with chondrocyte-like looking cells, whereas in other areas we have predominantly bland spindle cells. So these are the features of calcifying aponeurotic fibroma. The differential diagnosis for this is ossifying fibromyxoid tumor, but the ossifying fibromyxoid tumor, though the location is similar, we have a peripheral shell of ossification and not calcification within the tumor. So the next entity is the malignant tumor, which is commonly seen in the infancy, which is the infantile fibrosarcoma. It has a characteristic translocation of ETV6 NTRK3, which is translocation 12 and 12-15. It is fibrosarcoma seen in newborns, infants, and small children. It has some resemblance to the adult fibrosarcoma, but in comparison to adult fibrosarcoma, the clinical course, it has a very favorable prognosis with total resection and negative margins, and the mass usually becomes evident in the first year of life. In older children, the fibrosarcomas behave similar to the fibrosarcomas seen in adults and not like the infantile fibrosarcomas. So morphologically, infantile fibrosarcomas are highly cellular tumor, and they have an infiltrative margin and they are deeply located. Here you can see tongue-like infiltration present into the adjacent skeletal muscle. And the architecture resembles, it has a highly cellular fascicular growth pattern of the spindle cells which are oriented in a single direction. And one more characteristic feature to identify in this infantile fibrosarcoma is presence of this prominent lymphomononuclear cells which are present in the background, which is described in this tumor. And we also see presence of this hemangiopericytoma-like or staghound-like ectatic vascular pattern in infantile fibrosarcoma. There is no specific immunohistochemical marker to prove infantile fibrosarcoma. It can focally express CD34, S100, SMA, and also desmin, but it's very non-specific. So the most important clue is the age of presentation and all this morphological picture. And wide local excision is mostly curative. The diagnostic chromosomal translocation is translocation 12-13 with fusion of ETV6 on chromosome 12 to neurotrophin 3 receptor on NTRK3. Going to the next category of tumors, these are the tumors which are most common in children in first 5 years, which are the rhabdomyosarcomas. So in the WHO classification of tumors showing skeletal muscle differentiation, we have benign and the malignant category. In the benign categories are the rhabdomyomas, and in malignant we have rhabdomyosarcomas. In 2020, within the spindle cell rhabdomyosarcomas, they have divided into three different entities based upon the specific gene rearrangement because of the different prognostic feature, which we'll be discussing now. So starting with rhabdomyomas. So rhabdomyomas morphology is different in adult and fetal type. And the cardiac rhabdomyomas, which are seen in infants and children, kind of resemble the adult rhabdomyomas. So the morphology of cardiac rhabdomyomas are they are comprised of these large polygonal cells which are having abundant cytoplasm, and the cytoplasmic clearing is seen, and also we see characteristic these spider cells. So the spider cells means from the nucleus there are cytoplasmic extensions which are connecting to the cell membrane. So the presence of these spider cells are characteristic of cardiac rhabdomyoma. These spider cells are also seen in adult rhabdomyoma, and many times we also see presence of intracytoplasmic inclusions which are like fibrillary inclusions which represent the skeletal muscle myofibers. So the adult rhabdomyomas are common in the head and neck region, and they show diffuse positivity for tumors for markers showing myogenic differentiation like desmin, but myogenin and myodemon are less prominently positive. Because of their morphology of having abundant cytoplasm, the differential diagnosis we consider is the granular cell tumor. But in granular cell tumor, rather than fibrillary inclusions in the cytoplasm and spider cells, we see presence of a granular cytoplasm and not this kind of morphology. And other differential diagnosis is hibernoma. The hibernoma also has different morphology, and they are more common in the interscapular region. And the eosinophilic cytoplasm of the hibernoma is because of abundant mitochondria and not the myofibrils, and they show positivity for S100, whereas they are negative for the muscle specific markers. Other differential diagnosis is paraganglioma, which we can differentiate by doing the chromogranin, which is absent in rhabdomyoma, whereas the rhabdomyoma shows desmin positivity. So next is the fetal rhabdomyoma. These rhabdomyomas are very rare entities when compared to rhabdomyosarcomas. So fetal rhabdomyomas can occur in association with basal cell Leber syndrome, where there is loss of function mutation in tumor suppressor gene PTCH, or PAST1, which is involved in the Honig-Hedgehog pathway. In fetal rhabdomyomas are most common in the post-auricular region, and they are very rare lesions. And these are composed of cells, rhabdomyoblasts, or the maturing skeletal muscles which are present at different stage of maturation. We can have strap cells or the mature skeletal muscle with abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm, and cytoplasmic cross striations are also seen. But one feature to note is they do not have any mitotic activity, and there is no atypia is seen. So we should not confuse rhabdomyoma from rhabdomyosarcomas. And other category of rhabdomyoma is the genital rhabdomyoma. It looks similar to the fetal rhabdomyoma with many strap cells. We don't see much of nuclear atypia. Some mitosis can be seen in genital rhabdomyoma, and it presents like a polypoidal region, just similar to the botryoid variant of rhabdomyosarcoma. But most important thing to identify in this genital rhabdomyoma is there is no cambium layer present beneath the epithelial lining. And atypia is also not seen in case of rhabdomyomas. So this is a case of botryoid variant of embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. So it resembles a grape-like clusters, and microscopically we can see one row of undifferentiated small round blue cells just below the epithelium, and this is a very highly cellular line. So this is called as a cambium layer. So the name cambium is derived from the morphology of a cambium layer which is present in the wood or the stem of plants, which gives rise to the xylem and phloem. So cambium is a very cellular portion which is present in the plants. So moving on to rhabdomyosarcomas, the childhood rhabdomyosarcomas are more common in age of less than 15 years, and the peak age is before 5 years. It has a male preponderance, and most common sites are head and neck region, followed by gut. It is common in the retroperitoneal region, paratesticular region, limbs, and trunk. And the embryonal regions occur in younger patients than the alveolar subtype, whereas alveolar subtype of the rhabdomyosarcomas are frequent in adolescents, whereas spindled and sclerosing rhabdomyosarcomas can occur in infants, young children, and also adults. And pleomorphic type of rhabdomyosarcomas are common in adults. And in extremities, we see more of alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma than embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. In adults, the predominant site is extremities or limbs. They are less chemosensitive when compared to the childhood rhabdomyosarcomas. And pleomorphic subtype is the most common and outnumbers embryonal and alveolar. And alveolar RMS in older patients is also common in head and neck region. And this alveolar RMS can be mistaken for other round cell malignancies. So if we see subcategories of rhabdomyosarcomas, we have embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma, which has an intermediate prognosis, but the botryoid variant, which I have described before, has a superior prognosis when compared to embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. And there is alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma. It has a poor prognosis. And to categorize alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, we should see presence of a FOXO1 fusion positive. If there is a solid variant of alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma which is not showing FOXO1 fusion, then it has a prognosis similar to the embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. And the spindle cell and sclerosing rhabdomyosarcomas again have different subtypes based on which the prognosis varies. So this is a morphology of embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. So in embryonal RMS, in low power, we can see alternating areas of cellular and hypocellular myxoid areas. And the cell morphology is like a small round blue cell or undifferentiated morphology with high NC ratio, uniformly dispersed chromatin, very scant cytoplasm, and spindle cells can also be present. And in focal areas, we can see presence of this rhabdomyoblastic differentiation with a tadpole-like morphology or strap cell-like morphology, which is showing cytoplasmic striations. And there can also be cells which are this globoid with abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm. If we search in these tumors, some of the tumors will show this, may focally show this evidence of rhabdomyoblastic differentiation. So the alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma has this typical morphological pattern of the alveolar pattern. So it has this alveolar pattern separated by this fibrous septate. And within this alveoli, in the periphery, we have one layer of cell which is lining this nest. And within the center of the nest, we have discoiled population of tumor cells resembling the alveoli of the lung with desquamated pneumocytes or macrophages in the center. And in this alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma also, focally we may see presence of this rhabdomyoblastic differentiation, or else the whole tumor looks like an undifferentiated small round blue cell tumor. And in the solid variant, we have a solid variant of alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a differential diagnosis for embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. But the clue to identify solid RMS is that cell size is little bit larger than embryonal RMS, and this may be a subjective finding. So instead of a diffuse sheet-like arrangement, in solid variant of alveolar RMS, we can see presence of this fibrous septate. So this, if fibrous septate are present, we can think of a solid variant of alveolar RMS. So immunohistochemically, to differentiate a solid variant of alveolar RMS from an embryonal RMS, we can use myogenin. So myogenin is diffusely positive in alveolar RMS, whereas in embryonal RMS, it shows patchy positivity. And because in embryonal RMS, myo-D1 is much more positive than alveolar RMS. And genetically, alveolar RMS has a translocation of 213 and 113. 13 is the FOXO1 gene, and 2 represents PAX3 and 1 represents PAX7. And presence of translocation 113 with PAX7 has a much better prognosis than those with PAX3 FOXO1. So next subtype is a pleomorphic RMS, which is common in adults and extremities. Here it has this very pleomorphic morphology with atypia, nuclear enlargement, and hyperchromasia. Cross striations may virtually never found, and it is a very aggressive tumor. And to identify this pleomorphic RMS, we have to take help of immunohistochemistry. So this is a specific subtype of rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a spindle cell or sclerosing rhabdomyosarcoma. So the spindle cell rhabdomyosarcoma is characterized by spindled sarcomatoid morphology comprised of interlacing fascicles of cells, all of which have spindled kind of morphology. It resembles an MPNST or a leiomyosarcoma. And the other closely related variant is the sclerotic variant. So in this sclerotic variant, you have a dense thick band of sclerosis in the background. And because of the sclerosis, you can see the cells are arranged in a cord-like pattern or a trabeculae and sometimes a pseudovascular pattern. So the presence of abundant sclerosis in the background is characteristic of sclerosing rhabdomyosarcoma. And these spindle and sclerosing rhabdomyosarcoma show dot-like positivity for desmin, whereas there is diffuse positivity for MyoD1 and myogenin can be weakly positive. So we have to choose IHC based upon on the morphology. And in WHO 2020, they have divided the spindle or sclerosing rhabdomyosarcomas into a fusion positive rhabdomyosarcomas, which have VG-ALL fusion positives. And these are present in the infantile age group and they have a very good prognosis. And there is a MyoD1 mutant spindle cell or sclerosing rhabdomyosarcomas. These MyoD1 mutant spindle or sclerosing rhabdomyosarcomas can be present in both pediatric as well as adult age group, and these have poor prognosis. And there is one more TFCP2 and NCO2 rearranged rhabdomyosarcomas, and the two RMS with this rearrangement are located within the bone. They have an intraosseous location, because of which the sclerosing variant of the RMS can be confused with the osteosarcomas. So the differential diagnosis for rhabdomyosarcomas include all those tumors which may show a rhabdomyoblastic differentiation. So this rhabdomyoblastic differentiation can be seen in case of carcinosarcomas, mixed Mullerian tumors, Wilms tumor and hepatoblastoma, especially after the chemotherapy when there is a differentiation. Pulmonary blastomas and thymomas can also show a rhabdomyoblastic differentiation. And the tumors of neuroectodermal tumors like MPNST can show rhabdomyoblastic differentiation when it is called a malignant Treton tumors, ectomesenchymomas, medulloepithelioma when they show the myogenic differentiation, medulloblastomas with myogenic differentiation, and nevus can also show a rhabdomyoblastic differentiation. It is important to have knowledge of all rest of the tumors with rhabdomyoblastic differentiation so that we don't misdiagnose those tumors as rhabdomyosarcoma. So this is the next entity, which is a malignant and highly aggressive tumor seen in infants and children, is the extrarenal rhabdoid tumor. The extrarenal rhabdoid tumor has morphological similarity to the rhabdoid tumor which is seen in kidneys and also the ATRT of the brain. And these are characterized by presence of very inclusion-like intracytoplasmic eosinophilic hyaline-like inclusions. And the nucleus is pushed out to the periphery, and they have vesicular chromatin and prominent nucleoli is seen in case of a rhabdoid cells. So these rhabdoid cells express the keratin markers and also EMA, and very characteristic feature is the loss of INI1 due to SMARC-B1 gene mutation. There is loss of INI1, and some subset of extrarenal rhabdoid tumors can also show SMARC-A4 gene mutation. And these tumors also can focally express CD99, SMA, and S100. So the next category of tumor common in young adults and children is the desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor. It is common in abdominal cavity, peritoneum, and mesentery, and it can present as a multiple masses in the abdominal cavity also, and it shows a male predominance. So morphologically, desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor is characterized by this interlacing trabeculae of small round blue cells which are interconnecting, and they are surrounded by stroma which exhibits a lot of desmoplasia, and it can also be myxoid in nature. So in low power itself, the pattern is important to identify a lot of desmoplasia in the intervening stroma, and which can be myxoid, and the background also shows presence of lot of vascularity. And coming to the tumor cell morphology, they have this high NC ratio, but some of the cases can also show little epithelioid or rhabdoid morphology. That is rare, and most of the time it has an undifferentiated morphology with high NC ratio, scant cytoplasm, uniformly dispersed chromatin, and some prominent nucleoli. We see presence of frequent mitotic figures, and in the center of the tumor, we can also see presence of necrosis or cystic degeneration and frequent proliferative activity. So the most important clue for this desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor is its location and also the age group. So a desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor is polyphenotypic tumor. That is, it expresses epithelial markers with CK and EMA positivity. It expresses myogenic markers with dot-like positivity of desmin, and neural differentiation of or also seen like NAC and CD57 is positive, but these markers are rarely used in diagnosis of DSR-CT. The specific marker is the WT1, which is shows nuclear expression in desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor, and the antibodies of this, which the clone which directs the antibodies to the C terminus of the WT1 is positive in DSR-CT. And DSR-CT is characterized by translocation of 1122, the gene EWSR1 gene located on chromosome 22q, and the Wilms tumor gene WT1 on chromosome 11. So other small round blue cell tumor, which is common in infancy, is the melanotic neuroectodermal tumor of infancy. It has a characteristic location in the maxilla or mandible, and grossly we can see presence of this pigmented tumor, which usually destroys the jaw cavity. And despite being locally aggressive, if it is surgically excised with good margins, it rarely recurs. And it is common, as the name suggests, it occurs in infantile age group. So morphologically, it has a neuroectodermal differentiation. So it has a biphasic morphology with two types of cells. One is the small round blue cell tumors, the undifferentiated tumors which are there in the center. And at the periphery of the nest, we have this ectodermal tumors, or the ones which have this abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm. So here in the low power, we have nest of tumor cells with two types of cell morphologies. And within this ectodermal cells, which are lining the periphery of the nest, we can also see presence of intracytoplasmic melanin pigment. That's why it looks very black, and as the name says, it is a melanotic neuroectodermal tumor. This is also called as melanotic prognoma of infancy or retinal enlarged tumor. And IHC wise, it is positive for 99, and it expresses the melanocyte markers, which are HMV45 and melan A. So coming to the next, undifferentiated small round blue cell tumors of soft tissue and bone. In WHO 2020, they have divided this undifferentiated small round blue cell tumors into Ewing sarcoma. So to diagnose an Ewing sarcoma, it should have a characteristic translocation of EWRS1 with an ETS family of genes. So those include the EWRS1 with FLI1, ERG, ETV6, and the FUS, which is homologue of EWRS1 with the same ETS family of gene. And the second category is the round cell sarcoma, which have EWSR1 gene rearrangement, but the fusion partner do not belong to the ETS family. So that is EWSR1 non-ETS fusion. And the other, which were previously called as Ewing's-like sarcoma, which are the CIC rearranged sarcoma and sarcoma with B-cord genetic alterations. So Ewing sarcoma, definition-wise, we should have the fusion between EWSR1 or FUS1, which is a FET family of gene with the ETS family. And Ewing sarcoma can be present in skeletal or extraskeletal distribution. Within skeletal, it occurs in metaphysis or diaphysis, and extraskeletally, it has a wide anatomical distribution. It can occur in a wide extremities, head and neck, even in the visceral organs. And the common age group is adolescents and young adults, and it is common in less than 30 years of age. So morphologically, it has this typical diffuse pattern, and we can appreciate in low power some lobulated kind of architecture can be appreciated in Ewing sarcoma, and some fibrous septae are seen intervening this diffuse pattern of arrangement. And in high power, there are uniform population of cells which have similar kind of cells with large nucleus, finely stippled chromatin, and scant amount of cytoplasm, and the cytoplasmic borders are mostly indistinct in a classical Ewing sarcoma. We see presence of frequent mitotic figures, and many times because of intracytoplasmic glycogenation, we can see clearing of the cytoplasm of Ewing sarcoma, and this glycogen can be highlighted by PAS, which is diastase resistant. And Ewing sarcoma doing CD99 is important. While studying interpreting the immunostain for CD99, to diagnose Ewing sarcoma, we should see a diffuse strong membranous positivity. If it is not diffuse strong membranous positivity, we should do a genetic test, the molecular genetic workup, before giving a diagnosis of Ewing sarcoma. Because CD99 is a non-specific marker, it is also seen in a lot of other tumors, which are the lymphoblastic lymphomas, poorly differentiated synovial sarcoma, small cell osteosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcomas, DSRCT, small cell carcinoma, Merkel cell carcinoma, neuroblastoma is not positive for CD99. But in Ewing sarcoma, we should recognize the diffuse strong membranous positivity for CD99. And the most characteristic finding to diagnose EWRS1 is to identify this fusion genes of EWSR1 with FLI1, ERG, ETV1 or E1AF, which are the ETS family of genes. And this fusion can be detected by doing RT-PCR, which detects the fusion product, or EWSR1 gene rearrangement by using a break-apart probe. But if we use a break-apart probe, even the other tumors which have EWSR1 gene rearrangement shows a fusion signal, like in desmoplastic small round blue cell tumors, myxoid liposarcomas, clear cell liposarcoma, and extraskeletal myxoid chondrosarcoma, which have EWSR1 gene rearrangement. So these are the gene rearrangements seen in the typical or classical Ewing sarcomas, which belong to the ETS family and the FET family. This is the second category of undifferentiated round blue cell tumor, which is a small round cell sarcoma with EWSR1 and non-ETS fusions. So the non-ETS fusion is the NFAT-C2, NF80C2. So the tumors which have this gene rearrangement are characteristically located more in bones or skeletal location than in the soft tissue. So EWRS1 NFAT-C2 is also seen located in extremities and head and neck, and they are common in children and adults. And morphologically, one morphological clue to identify these translocation is it has a pattern similar to Ewing sarcoma with a diffuse arrangement of small round blue cell tumors, but we can see presence of this myxohyaline stroma in the background. So here, as we can appreciate, we have a lot of myxohyaline stroma in the background, which is a feature described in NFAT2 rearranged round cell sarcomas. Because of this abundant myxoid stroma and the arrangement of round cells in a single file pattern or a cord-like pattern or reticular pattern, the differential diagnosis is myoepithelial carcinomas and plasmacytomas. And just like myoepithelial sarcomas, it can show focal keratin positivity, but it doesn't show S100, SMA or calponin positivity. And it can show focal CD138 positivity, but it doesn't show CD38 positivity. So this should be kept in mind, and also the age group, because round cell sarcoma with EWRS1 non-ETS fusions occur in young age group when compared to plasmacytomas. And this NFAT2 rearranged tumors show diffuse strong positive for CD99. They're also positive for NKX2.2. NKX2.2 is a specific marker seen in Ewing sarcoma. And in Ewing sarcoma, based on fusion proteins, they can also express FLI1 and ERG, but that immunohistochemistry is not very specific. So recently in AJSP, they have described this NKX3.1. So NKX3.1 is an immunohistochemical marker specific for the prostate, but recently it is described that these are useful in case of NFAT2 rearranged Ewing's-like sarcoma and also mesenchymal chondrosarcomas. Other non-ETS family rearrangement with EWRS1 is EWRS1 PATZ1. Here the location is more predominantly in the chest wall, abdomen, and it's also identified in CNS region. It occurs in the wide age range. It can also occur in adults and older age population. Here the CD99 is not consistently expressed, and there is a co-expression of myogenic and neurogenic markers. Coming to the next category of CIC, next category of round blue cell tumor, which is the CIC rearranged sarcomas. These were previously called as atypical Ewing sarcoma, but now they have made it a distinct category as these do not have the EWRS1 gene fusions. And these tumors are usually not chemosensitive like the Ewing sarcoma, though the regimen or the treatment protocol given is same. These have much more aggressive clinical course when compared to the classical Ewing sarcomas. And CIC rearranged sarcomas affect young adults rather than children, and there is no sex predilection. The most common fusion partner for CIC is DUX4. And immunohistochemically, to identify CIC rearranged sarcomas, apart from the Ewing's-like morphology, when we do immunohistochemistry, the CD99 doesn't express that diffuse strong positivity. There is only patchy positivity, and it is frequently positive for ETV6, WT1, and when the fusion partner for CIC is NUT-M1 or NUT-M1, we can also see NUT positivity in immunohistochemistry in these tumors. And morphological clues to identify the CIC carcinoma is, in comparison to Ewing sarcomas, the cell size is larger, and these cells exhibit some more pleomorphism when compared to Ewing sarcoma. We can also have some myxoid stroma or cystic degeneration in CIC rearranged sarcomas. There is frequent mitosis and necrosis can also be present. But the most specific thing is to see if there is no CD99 positivity in a tumor showing Ewing's-like morphology, then we can proceed to do ETV4 immunostain, or WT1 is also helpful. And to establish diagnosis, we should look for these translocations by molecular genetic studies. The next category of sarcomas is a sarcoma with a BCOR genetic rearrangement. BCOR is the BCL6 co-repressor. These tumors show overexpression of BCOR, and the fusion partners for BCOR is the CCNB3, MAML3, and there is an internal tandem duplication in the short arm of chromosome X. This BCOR gene rearranged sarcomas are common in male, and it has a predilection for older children and adolescents. And these show morphology similar to Ewing sarcoma with round blue cell-like morphology, and 22% show spindle cell morphology. And one more characteristic feature is presence of myxoid background in case of BCOR rearranged BCOR genetic altered sarcomas. There is a tumor called as primitive myxoid sarcoma of infancy, which is now removed because they are seen to show BCOR genetic alterations. So they are also merged in this category of tumors. The overall survival is better than the CIC rearranged sarcomas, and it is similar to the Ewing sarcoma. Morphologically, it has a small round blue cell morphology, and in background we can see some vague globulation and vascularity. It can also have slightly spindle morphology, and few of the articles have described that we can see cytoplasmic clearing in this sarcomas having BCOR genetic alteration, and myxoid myxoid degeneration or cystic degeneration is also seen in sarcoma showing BCOR genetic alterations. But to diagnose, we can use immunohistochemistry for BCOR, which shows diffuse strong nuclear positivity, but BCOR is not specific as it can also be seen in some cases of polydifferentiated synovial sarcoma. And this BCOR rearranged sarcomas can be intraosseous in location, and they also express SADB2, TLE1, and cyclin D1. So it comes in differential diagnosis for small cell osteosarcomas. And CD99 is positive in only 50%, and BCOR is not specific, and cyclin P3 can also, immunostain can also be positive. To diagnose, we have to see the BCOR CCNB3 fusions by FISH or RT-PCR. So finally, coming to how to approach these tumors which have a small round blue cell morphology and they are undifferentiated. To diagnose these tumors, we should first see the clinical and radiological picture. So clinically, we should look at the age of the tumor and the site of the tumor, because of which we can narrow a lot of differential diagnosis. Then the morphological picture, immunohistochemistry to identify the line of differentiation, and finally the molecular genetic studies. So if we see any undifferentiated or small round blue cell tumors in infantile age group, the differential diagnosis which we think of are the lymphomas, are the leukemias. We should always think of lymphomas and leukemias in any age group when we have a small round blue cell morphology. And the other differential diagnosis is the neuroblastomas and the melanotic neuroectodermal tumor of infancy. And even based upon the location, we have other range of differential diagnosis. Like in orbit, we think of rhabdomyosarcomas, in liver the hepatoblastomas, in lung the pleuropulmonary blastomas, and so on. Coming to the non-small round blue cell tumors in children and young adults, we think of rhabdomyosarcoma, Ewing sarcoma, small cell osteosarcoma, desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor, and lymphomas, leukemias. If it is a midline location or even in metastatic site, we can have malignant germ cell tumor, which is showing an undifferentiated brown blue cell morphology. In adults, the differential diagnosis which comes are the mesenchymal chondrosarcomas, polydifferentiated synovial sarcoma having round cell morphology, the high-grade myxoid sarcomas, and small cell carcinomas, Merkel cell carcinoma, and also the lymphomas and leukemias. So based upon the location, again we can narrow down the differential diagnosis. If it is located in mandible and maxilla showing pigment, and if it is an infant, we think of melanotic neuroectodermal tumor. And in adrenal and parasympathetic ganglia, we think of neuroblastoma, but neuroblastoma can also be present in head and neck and also at metastatic site. In kidney, we keep a differential diagnosis of Wilms tumor, PNETs, or a renal rhabdoid tumor. In abdomen location, the desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor. If it is present in the skin, in the dermis, we think of Merkel cell carcinomas. And we should also think of lymphomas and leukemias which are present in the dermis. In head and neck region, there are Ewing sarcoma, rhabdomyosarcomas. Then the sinonasal undifferentiated carcinomas and neuroendocrine carcinoma should also kept in differential diagnosis in sinonasal region, neuroblastoma and lymphoma. If it is having skeletal presentation, we'll think of small cell osteosarcoma, Ewing sarcomas, and the leukemia or lymphoma infiltration. In the chest from the lung, the differentials are small cell carcinoma, pleuropulmonary blastoma. From the ribs, Ewing sarcoma can arise, and also laterally we have polydifferentiated synovial sarcoma. In mediastinal location, the lymphoma, leukemia, and germ cell tumor. And from liver, we have hepatoblastoma and undifferentiated embryonal sarcoma. So based upon the location and age, we can narrow down the differential diagnosis. And further, coming to immunohistochemical approach to diagnose small round blue cell tumor, this is like a small brief algorithm to do immunohistochemistry. So when we see a small round blue cell tumor, we can do a basic panel of cytokeratins, the leukocyte common antigens to exclude the hematolymphoid malignancies, and TDT, because when there is a leukemia which is in the pro or pre stage, it doesn't express the mature lymphoid marker or the leukocyte common antigen. So then TDT is helpful. And desmin, synaptophysin, CD56, WT1, CD99, and SAL4, or any other marker for germ cell tumor. This SAL4 is like a pan germ cell tumor. So if it is positive for LCA or TDT, we can think of hematolymphoid malignancies. In some rare conditions, we can also, if it is morphology is more like hematolymphoid malignancies, we can also add CD30 or CD138. And if it is positive for SAL4, which is a pan germ cell marker, we go for germ cell tumors. And if it is CK positive, the CK positive round blue cell tumors include the desmoplastic small round blue cell tumor. So if it is an abdominal location in a adolescent or young adults, especially if it is a male, we can think of DSRCT, and morphologically if there is desmoplasia, we can do WT1 and desmit. And for synovial sarcoma, based upon the morphology again, on morphology if it is undifferentiated, we can sometimes see presence of HPC like vascular channels. And to prove this, we can do CD34 and TLE1. And for malignant rhabdoid tumor, which shows cytoplasmic CK positive, if it has a rhabdoid kind of morphology, we can do INI1, where there is loss of nuclear expression. If none of these markers are positive and there is Desmond positivity, we can go on to do further myogenic markers like MyoD1 and myogenin for rhabdomyosarcomas. If it is WT1 positive, abdominal location or kidney, if we see presence of in addition to the blastemal component, which has undifferentiated morphology, if we see epithelial or mesenchymal component, we can go for Wilms tumor. And if it's negative for Desmond and WT1, we can do synapto or chromogranin for neuroectodermal differentiation. If it is positive, more positive for synaptophysin, we can go for Ewing sarcoma and also do CD99. And neuroblastoma CD99 negative, but it is positive for both synapto and chromogranin. In case all these markers are negative, other tumors we can think of are the small cell osteosarcomas, where we can use SAT-B2 and mesenchymal chondrosarcoma. For mesenchymal chondrosarcoma, we can see presence of HPC like vascular channels and the chondroid or the cartilaginous element if present, and other is undifferentiated neuroblastoma. And we have some specific markers which are more useful for Ewing sarcoma, which are NKX 2.2. For CIC rearranged sarcoma, we can use ETV4 or WT1. And for sarcoma with BCOR genetic alterations, we can use BCOR, WT1 and CCNV3. For neuroblastoma, FOX2B. For malignant rhabdoid tumor, loss of INI1. And if it is dermis or subcutaneous location, and if we are thinking of Merkel cell carcinoma, we can do CK20, which shows dot-like positivity. And mesenchymal chondrosarcoma, we have markers of cartilaginous differentiation, which is SOX9. And recently, NKX 3.1 is seen to be useful in mesenchymal chondrosarcoma. And for polydifferentiated synovial sarcoma, we can use TLE1. So if it is, we cannot solve with immunohistochemistry, or we want to further confirm, we can do the molecular genetic studies. So if we have any tumor where the presumptive diagnosis of Ewing's category of tumor, we can take that fresh tissue and give for PCR analysis, or we can also use the frozen fixed paraffin embedded tissue if the material is adequate. So for adequate material, we should have at least 1,000 cells with a good RNA material, because we do a RT-PCR. With that, if we do RT-PCR in case of if fresh tissue is available, if it is positive, then we can give as Ewing sarcoma with this characteristic translocation. In case fresh tissue is not available and RT-PCR is not feasible, we can also do a FISH analysis for EWSR1 translocation, or we can also do the rearrangements with the genetic fusion partners and give the molecular report. So the specific translocations for the round blue cell tumors are EWSR1 for Ewing sarcoma, CIC DUX4, BCOR sarcomas, where we see BCOR CCNB3 fusions, and for alveolar sarcomas, where we have FOXO1 fusion protein. For malignant rhabdoid tumors, we don't have to do molecular genetic study. Mostly we see INI1 loss, but if we want to proceed, we can see SMART-B1 deletions or mutations. And for myxoid liposarcomas, we can do FISH with DDIT3 probe. For mesenchymal chondrosarcoma, the HEY-NCO2 gene rearrangement. And for polydifferentiated synovial sarcoma, we have translocation of X80 between SYT, which is synovial sarcoma T, and the SSX1, 2, or 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Geethanjali. I think that was from your phone. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was very great of you to do it off the phone. Anyway, we have a few questions on the YouTube. Would you be willing to take them?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Oshan Shrestha has 2 questions. First one is lymphocytic infiltrate also common in adult fibrosarcoma?
Like in adult fibrosarcoma, it is not like commonly described. And many times infantile fibrosarcoma doesn't come in differential diagnosis with adult. One is because of the age. It has a very specific age of presentation.
Right. The
In
second
adult
question,
also it can be present, but it's not very common.
yeah. There's another question by Dr. Oshan Shrestha again, and he says, what is the prognosis of NF80C2 sarcoma as compared to the classical Ewing sarcoma?
So this NF80C2 sarcomas, the prognosis is little poorer because it's not as chemosensitive as Ewing sarcoma. One is that, and other one is it can be a difficult diagnosis because since it has mostly intraosseous location, the diagnosis is also difficult, so it is not picked up early and we don't give a specific chemotherapy regimen. So that's why the prognosis is poorer than the classical Ewing sarcoma.
Right. Now, there is another question, and this has come straight to the Neelam chat group, not into this group, which is Dr. Yasmin from Skims, and she writes, Geeta ma'am, she addresses you as Geeta. She says, Geeta ma'am, please take a class on approach to bone tumors. My exams are very close in December. This is from Skims.
Okay, so we
So
can
that's
schedule, sir. There is lot of time till December.
Yeah, December. So Dr. Yasmin, if you she's not online, so I think we'll write it back to her that
Okay.
December is quite far, and we can schedule a class on approach to bone tumors.
Yes.
Right. Then there are some comments. Dr. Kurat Khoja says, really great lecture. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Manoj says, very fantastic session, very informative. Thank you, Geethanjali, ma'am. We would all love that, ma'am. That is regarding the Dr. Yasmin's comment, on the Neelam Trade group. And the comment comes from Dr. Khurad. They would love, ma'am, to have a lecture on approach to bone tumors. And Dr. Geethanjali herself is writing, thank you everyone for dealing with patients. It was very brave on your part to take it up from your phone. Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And these things do happen. Technical issues can happen at any point of time.
I don't know what happened suddenly to microphone.
It's absolutely fine. But then it was brave on your part to take it up and then do it so well. Excellent. Well done. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.